do that. I just want to ask you another issue. I just want to walk through it, and if I get it wrong technically, I apologise. When an aircraft takes off from, say, Melbourne to Sydney, does it only carry enough fuel to get from Melbourne to Sydney, or I mean, it must carry extra fuel? I mean, you know, what are the parameters of extra fuel that it's supposed to carry?
We're talking about an operator's fuel management process, what they need to do.
Commercial aircraft.
For a commercial aircraft, I don't have the exact details of how they work that out. I know what I would do as a private pilot in regards to ensuring that I had sufficient fuel on board, but I'm not sure about the operator in regards to that, whether...
But my understanding is that it will be the fuel to proceed on the journey would be, the information I've obtained is that it's 10% of the fuel required. You need approach fuel, there's a fixed fuel reserve, and a special holding fuel when required. Is that
when required, holding fuel?
Yeah. So you need to have a reasonable margin, a safety margin.
I can get Mr. Roger Weeks, who's my acting executive manager standards, who has a good understanding of all this.
Sure, that's fine. Because I do want to ask him a couple of questions. Because I mean, my question is, does that extra fuel load take into account forecast weather conditions such as tempo? And inter, I understand tempo is the indicator of temporary fluctuations.
For 1 hour, it changes for 1 hour, and inter is for half an hour, and any fuel management should take that into account.
Okay. And the possibility of diverting to an alternate airport.
And the possibility of diverting if necessary.
Okay, so I don't think I need Mr. Weeks at this point. So it's not optional to take tempo into information and alternate airports. You just have to do it, don't you? It's in terms of fuel loads.
Again, I'm only going on my own experience in regards to being a private pilot, but yes, I would take into account fuel management for a tempo or intake situation.
But in terms of from a regulatory point of view, if you have to take into account tempo and intake.
We have defined fuel management applications in regards to our civil aviation publication.
I think there's a nod there. So you have to, it's not an optional thing. And in terms of aviation accidents that come down to pilot error, I know you're not the ATSB, but pilot error can be a significant factor, can it not?
It can, Senator, yes.
How significant can it be? If it's...
I guess it depends on the actual accident in regards to how significant it is, but pilot error is one of those things, one of those causal factors that can be taken into account.
All right. So, and fatigue is one of those issues that needs to be taken into account.
Fatigue management is certainly a concern to a number of aviation authorities around the world, including ICAO. Right.
So now you have instructions with respect to airline rostering to avoid pilot fatigue. The referred to as the regulatory flight duty limitations under 48.1 of CAO.
CAO 48.
CAO 48. Yeah. I know it's a bit complex, but in principle, these regulations prohibit a pilot of two pilot aircraft flying more than 8 hours per day and/or having a tour of duty flying and ground time of more than 11 hours. In other words, no flight should commence takeoff unless the pilot in command can be reasonably certain that the flight will be completed within this regulatory flight and duty limitations. Is that broadly correct?
I don't have the exact details at the tip of my finger, but yes, it's a rough.
Now, I understand that there are circumstances where it may be necessary for a pilot to exceed the 8-hour flying limit to 9 hours and the 11-hour tour of duty limit to 12 hours if they're in flight and, say, an unexpected weather condition pops up.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. And again, I'm happy for you to go back to this. That's my understanding as well. Now, I'm informed that Qantas interpret this regulation rather liberally. They state in their flight Standing Order 8415, which is dated the 1st of July 2015, which I've received a copy of, and just in case my friends from Qantas are listening, they won't be able to track where it's come from, which says ATC holding requirements or forecast weather conditions that are tempo or inter or require an alternate airport to be planned are advisory and need not be considered for the purpose of applying RFDLs. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that order.
I wonder if I could just, I've got a couple of copies. I wonder if I... Yes.
Thank you very much.
If I may, and I wonder if we can, Mr. Skidmore can get a copy.
So can I, if I just understand you correctly, Senator, you're mixing fuel management with fatigue management.
Well, I think
and we've got to understand how that's actually being applied inside that.
Well, because fuel management, in a sense, relates to the amount of fuel you have might relate to the number of hours you're actually in the air before you have to
Well, it
land.
always does in my book.
Yes, right. It's a law of gravity, I think. It's a law of gravity, but you can't divorce fuel management from fatigue management, can you not?
But I could read that, and I haven't got the document obviously, but the
giving it
way
to you now.
you said it then, I could interpret it also to mean that in regards to the termination of the required flight duty limits, not to take planned events or possible events like a holding for an hour or holding for half an hour as a limit.
Well, I'm just the literal interpreter, and I'm happy for you to reflect on this because it concerns me. So, you know, the carrying of additional fuel is a mandatory consideration for tempo or inter or alternate
For
airports.
flight planning.
Yeah, for flight planning. But the tempo or inter or alternate airports don't appear to be mandatory considerations with respect to fatigue. Can you see my point that you can't divorce the two because there's a strict requirement as to how much fuel you must carry, which by implication relates to the amount of time that a pilot is likely to be on duty. But it seems from this Qantas directive to its application of flight time limitations, and it's signed off by the chief pilot, that it doesn't seem to be a mandatory requirement. You can,
I'm happy to take it on notice, Senator, have a look at it, and then we can have a discussion if
yeah,
need be.
but and also in the context of that, I'd like to get an appreciation of what Virgin and Jetstar's flight standing orders say, and perhaps a definitive statement from CASA as to whether it fits the standing orders and if they're acceptable from a fatigue management perspective. I don't have access to Virgin and Jetstar's, but it seems to me this seems to be saying your hours shouldn't be circumscribed by the tempo and inter and alternate airports, which seems to be, on the face of it, inconsistent. My reading of it is. You can see my point, I hope.
I can see that there might be some interpretation there that we need to understand. I agree, Senator.
Senator Bennett, on my copy says, "Dear Nick, hope you find this interesting. Kind regards, Joe Blake."
No, it doesn't say that at all. You know, I'm much more careful than that. So, I might come back to that, Chair. I know there are other senators that want to ask some questions. I might want to come back to that in a minute, in a few minutes.
Well, Senator Stirl seems to have deserted us. Senator Cameron, have you got questions?
Only one quick one, and I would assume it would be a negative response. Did the agency have any involvement in the Badgerys Creek environmental impact statement?
I'd have to ask some of my executive managers. The indication, my understanding, no, Senator.
That's what Mr Murdoch told me this morning. I was just checking that. That's fine, thank you. Mr Murdoch's on the ball again.
Senator Stirl, you're on. Senator Bullock, you're on.
Oh, it's changing my standing order straight away. Mr Skidmore, I'm slow, Glenn. I'm going to have to catch on. I'll do what I've prepared. Mr Skidmore, are you aware of a study by the University of New South Wales that examined aircraft maintenance in Australia? Released in November last year.
If it's the same document, I have seen a document by the University of New South Wales. Senator, I can't remember the exact date. It might have been released.
Yeah, looking at the future of maintenance. Look, for example, at the practices of the International Civil Aviation Organisation, ICAO, and said the system was under strain. It said that their Universal Safety Oversight Audit Program hadn't worked since 2009, and as a result other countries had put in their own programs to look at the standard of international maintenance and recommended a review of Australia's safety oversight of offshore maintenance, noting that they're concerned with a trend to bilateral aviation safety agreements, given that the independent oversight that was previously provided was no longer being provided. That's the study I'm referring to. So is that the one you had in mind?
I can recall seeing a document from the University of New South Wales, and I had a quick glance through it, but I can't recall sending it on to be assessed anywhere, Senator.
Well, in brief, what they found is what I just said. So let's just work on the basis that, please accept my word that that's what that study says. And so in the light of it, I ask whether, given the weaknesses in the ICAO system that have been identified in the report, what measures CASA have put in place to upgrade safety surveillance of the facilities to which Australian Airlines offshore maintenance of registered planes. So,
first of all, I'd have to. You're asking me to accept someone's opinion in regards to ICAO and oversight, and I'm not prepared to do that at this stage until I've done a more detailed study of the report. But in regards
is it true that that system that I quoted them as saying ceased operation in 2009? Did it cease operation in 2009?
The continuous monitoring approach put out by ICAO, no, Senator, it's still continuing.
The Universal Safety Oversight Audit Program.
It hasn't ceased, Senator, it still continues. We're part of it.
Well, that's knocked me for six, I must say, because that's what I'm told, that this report was based on, that those programs had stopped and therefore other organisations were responding by implementing their own systems.
Not as far as I'm aware, Senator. Jonathan Alec is a good expert in understanding of this.
The USOP program conventionally involved ICAO sending groups of auditors around to various countries and conducting an audit. That process is still in place, but it's been supplemented now, and I won't say supplanted, but supplemented by a program where states provide information to ICAO on an ongoing basis about in response to a whole raft of questions that are put to them. And the planning of those audits now are based on the kind of information that comes in. So there are fewer of them conducted, and when they are conducted, they're conducted in part on the basis of information that comes in or the absence of information. But the USOP audit program has not ceased.
Right. So, okay. There's sort of self-reporting now from the maintenance organisations.
It's self-reporting, but those reports are assessed by ICAO, and the ICAO's assessment of those reports may actually lead to the conduct of an audit.
So, are you aware that the United States has put their own system in for checking their overseas maintenance?
Well, many states have their own systems in place. Australia has a look at the...
We go and audit organisations, operators overseas, centre maintenance organisations.
Yeah. The USOP program was never intended to supplant a state's responsibility to ensure that maintenance organisations that are authorised to conduct maintenance on their aircraft are being managed properly.
So you're happy that those systems, the international systems, are still working to your satisfaction?
I think there are a number of systems in regards to it, and there is a number of different aviation authorities that we respect and believe and consider are doing a very good job, and we would work closely with them in regards to that. Where we still send our auditors to do a surveillance of maintenance organisations in Europe when necessary, to assure ourselves in regards to that, or across to Singapore or other locations, again, to ensure ourselves in regards to the activities that are being conducted.
Do you believe you've got adequate resources to do the auditing and inspections that you believe are necessary?
Given that we have a risk-based assessment or process in regards to making those determinations of surveillance activities, I think we are developing and trying to get to a better, more robust system, but I have the resources necessary at this stage.
And you accept that at the end of the day, CASA is responsible for ensuring that that's in your court?
Ultimately, the operator's responsible, Senator. We assure ourselves in regards to the activities being conducted that are done within the regulations.
And you believe that you've got the capacity to do that adequately?
I could always do with more, Senator, if you want to get me some.
I wasn't saying you shouldn't have more. Senator Still,